Hey everyone! Today we're diving into the interesting history of the Kingdom of Axum, one of the most powerful and influential civilizations in ancient Africa. So, Axum, also known as Aksum, was located along the Red Sea coast, just north of the Horn of Africa. It was established around the 1st century CE and hit its peak between the 3rd and 6th centuries. Even after its height, Aksum managed to survive as a smaller kingdom into the 8th century. Now, the land that Aksum once ruled is part of modern-day Ethiopia, Eritrea, Djibouti, Somalia, and Somaliland. The kingdom thrived because of its agricultural richness, cattle herding, and control over vital trade routes. Aksum's trade networks were key, with gold and ivory being exchanged for luxury items from abroad. The wealth from these activities helped the kingdom construct incredible stone monuments, many of which still stand today. Aksum achieved some impressive firsts too. It was the first sub-Saharan African state to mint its own coins and, by around 350 CE, it became the first to officially adopt Christianity. They even created their own writing system, Ge'ez, which is still used in Ethiopia today. However, things began to decline in the 7th century. Muslim Arab traders started taking over the region's trade, and local rival groups, like the Bedia, began rising in power. Though Aksum became much smaller, it survived in the southern part of its original territory and would eventually rise again as the Kingdom of Abyssinia in the 13th century. Now, let's talk about the name and foundation of Aksum. It's thought that the name may come from a mix of two words, water from the Algu language and official from the Ge'ez language. This probably has to do with the large ancient water reservoirs found in Aksum's capital area. People had been living there since the Stone Age, but it wasn't until the 1st century that Aksum really began to flourish, thanks to its fertile lands, reliable monsoon rains, and control over regional trade. Aksum's trading network reached as far as Egypt to the north, and East Africa and southern Arabia to the east. Crops like wheat, barley, millet, and teff were grown in the region as early as the 1st millennium BCE, and cattle herding dates back to at least the 2nd millennium BCE. The vast grasslands of the Ethiopian plateau made it perfect for raising livestock, and the region also had the advantage of being free from many of the tropical diseases that plagued other parts of Africa. All this wealth from agriculture and trade eventually led to the formation of a united kingdom in the late 1st century. A single king replaced the confederation of local chiefdoms, and Aksum emerged as a dominant power in the Ethiopian highlands for the next 600 years. Expansion really picked up around 350 CE. And by then, Aksum had extended its influence to southern Arabia, including Yemen, as well as Somalia and other neighboring regions. The kings of Aksum started referring to themselves as the King of Kings, likely because they allowed conquered tribes to keep some level of independence while still paying tribute, usually in the form of cattle. Aksum wasn't just about trade though, they had their share of military victories too. In the mid-4th century, Aksum clashed with Nubia, which was a major kingdom to the north, located in what is now Sudan. Aksum's king Ezana I launched an attack on Nubia's capital, Meroe, and the once powerful Nubian kingdom quickly fell apart. Later, in the 6th century, another king, Caleb I, led a significant expansion of Aksum's influence. His army managed to control the important trade routes across the Red Sea, including Yemen. At this point, the Aksumite kingdom was relatively small in size, but its control over trade made it incredibly powerful. Caleb even launched an invasion into Yemen in response to the persecution of Christians there, with the backing of the Byzantine Empire. This gave Aksum control over Yemen for a while, though it eventually lost the territory to the Sassanids in 570 CE. And now, let's talk about Aksum, the capital city. This ancient city, sometimes called Aksumis, sat at an impressive altitude of over 2,000 meters in the northern Ethiopian highlands, in what is now the Tigray region. It was located near the river Tex, which is a tributary of the Nile. From the 1st century CE, Aksum became a bustling hub, not only as the capital of a trading empire, but also as a ceremonial center filled with amazing stone monuments. These monuments, which kind of remind you of Egyptian obelisks, are made from granite and were carved to resemble the architectural features of Aksumite buildings, like those made of dry stone and timber. Some of these stelae, as they're called, were massive. For example, one broken stele measured 33 meters in length and weighed 520 tons, making it the largest monolith ever transported in ancient history. They moved these giant stones from quarries using log rollers. Quite an achievement, right? Most of these stelae were used as markers for tombs, often with carved stone thrones nearby, sometimes covered with inscriptions. Besides the stelae, the city also had some incredible palace-like buildings, complete with towers and large stone basements, royal tombs, and water systems like cisterns and irrigation channels. The architecture was remarkable too. Most structures were built on granite foundations with grand staircases and decorated with intricate stonework. Stone lion head gargoyles were even used for roof drainage. These structures were often a mix of stone and wood, where wood was used to strengthen walls and support doorways, roofs, and windows. The influence of South Arabian cultures is clear in the art and decoration seen throughout the city, especially in the use of astral symbols like discs and crescents. By the late 4th century, the city even had several churches, showing just how important Christianity was becoming in Aksum. Now, when it comes to trade, Aksum was a powerhouse. The kingdom's main exports were gold and ivory, luxury goods that were in high demand, especially with the Byzantine Empire. But they didn't stop there. Aksum also traded in salt, slaves, incense like frankincense and myrrh, tortoiseshell, rhino horns, emeralds, and obsidian. All of these goods were sent to the port of Adulis, Aksum's seaport, where they were exchanged for imported items like Egyptian and Indian textiles, weapons, iron, and glassware. And get this, Aksumite coins have even been found in places as far away as the eastern Mediterranean, India, and Sri Lanka, showing just how far-reaching their trade was. Now, on to one of the most significant moments in Aksum's history, the adoption of Christianity. In the mid-4th century, King Ezana I officially embraced Christianity. Before this, the people of Aksum practiced a polytheistic religion with gods like Maram, the god of war and monarchy, and other deities tied to the moon, stars, and the underworld. These gods were often honored with sacrifices, especially cattle. So, how did Christianity come to Aksum? Well, it was likely introduced through trade and contact with Egyptian missionaries. The kingdom had close ties with the Roman Empire, and with Christianity spreading through the empire, it made sense for Aksum to follow suit. The story goes that a man named Frumentius, who was shipwrecked and ended up in Aksum, played a key role in spreading Christianity. He became a tutor to the royal children and later an advisor to King Ezana I. Frumentius eventually convinced the king to adopt Christianity, and after traveling to Alexandria, he returned as Aksum's first bishop. Thanks to him, Christianity took root in Aksum, and the kingdom became one of the first Christian states in the world. Churches were built, monasteries were founded, and translations of the Bible were made in Ge'ezi. The most important church in Aksum was the Church of Mariam Sion, which is believed by some to house the Ark of the Covenant. Although no one has seen the Ark to confirm its existence, this belief has become an important part of Ethiopian tradition. Christianity continued to spread across the Aksum kingdom, with rural areas converting by the 5th century, though temples dedicated to the older pagan gods remained open for a while longer. The influence of Christianity in Ethiopia has been so strong that it has lasted right into modern times, making it a crucial part of Ethiopia's cultural and religious identity. And a big part of Aksum's culture was its writing system and coinage. Before Aksum rose to prominence, the region used an ancient script from southern Arabia called Sabaean, a Semitic language that had been around since the 5th century BCE. You'd also see Greek pop up in a few inscriptions. But as Aksum grew, it developed its own writing system, called Ge'ezi or Ethiopic. The earliest examples of this script come from the 2nd century, carved into slabs of stone. While Ge'ezi has roots in the Old Sabaean script, it evolved over time into something distinct, with characters representing both vowels and consonants, and it was read from left to right. What's amazing is that Ge'ezi is still in use today in modern Ethiopia. Aksum wasn't just about blending cultures when it came to writing, it applied that same strategy to its coinage. It was the first kingdom in sub-Saharan Africa to mint its own coins, starting in the 3rd century. These coins were made of gold, silver, and bronze, and they blended different influences from Greek inscriptions to Sabaean religious symbols. Even the weights of the coins followed Roman standards. Most of the coins were bronze, but what's really fascinating is that many of the details we know about Aksum's kings come from these coins. They feature portraits of the king, often with ears of corn on either side, and after King Azana I converted to Christianity, they also featured Christian crosses. The coins often carried uplifting messages like, "Peace to the people," or "Health and happiness to the people," showing how much importance the kingdom placed on its image. Now let's dive into the arts of Aksum. While their pottery wasn't fancy, it had its own charm. Aksumite potters made simple red and black terracotta wares, but without the use of a wheel. These pots were usually matte in finish, with geometric designs achieved through carving or painting. The Christian cross was a popular motif, and while their pottery was quite basic compared to Mediterranean imports, it still reflected the creativity of the people. When it came to sculpture, not many large statues from the Aksumite period have survived. However, one interesting find is a stone base with carved footprints, suggesting that a large metal statue once stood there. The inscription nearby even mentions statues made of gold and bronze, though these treasures have been lost to history, likely due to looting. The famous stone thrones near the stele may also have once held metal statues, and small figurines of nude females and animals have been found in abundance. Unfortunately, most of the grand tombs of Aksum were raided long ago, so all that's left are broken fragments and a few traces of what were likely elaborate burial chambers. Precious items like storage chests and materials have long disappeared, leaving historians to guess at the kingdom's lost treasures. Aksum began to decline in the late 6th century. There were likely several reasons for this. Overuse of agricultural land, for one, could have weakened the kingdom's ability to sustain itself. The Western Bedouin herders, who began encroaching on Aksum's territory, formed their own small kingdoms and attacked Aksum's trade caravans. Another challenge was Aksum's policy of granting autonomy to conquered tribal chiefs. While it seemed like a smart way to keep the peace, it backfired when some of these chiefs had enough power to launch rebellions. But perhaps the biggest blow to Aksum's prosperity came in the early 7th century, when Arab Muslim traders began dominating the Red Sea trade routes. With competition heating up, Aksum's influence slowly faded, and the heartland of the kingdom shifted about 300 kilometers south to cities like Lalibela and Gondar. By the late 8th century, the Aksum Empire had dissolved. Even though the kingdom declined, the city of Aksum itself remained an important religious center. The territory that once made up the Aksumite kingdom eventually developed into the medieval Kingdom of Abyssinia, which was founded by the Solomonid dynasty around 1270 CE. These kings claimed to be descended from none other than the biblical King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba, keeping Aksum's legacy alive for centuries to come.